Our body's been invaded. It's moved past the skin and membranes. It's moved past our innate immunity. Are we going to die? No. We have our third line, the adaptive immunity. These are powerful defenses aimed at specific targets, and they're destroyed through a cooperation among the body's defense cells and proteins. There's two basic ways that this adaptive immunity works. There's cell-mediated and there are anti-mediated routes. I'll be talking about these. Cell-mediated immunity involves our friends, the APC. Those are antigen-presenting cells. There are types of white blood cells that might be a huge macrophage, maybe a dendritic cell with many arms, or other white blood cells known as lymphocytes. Whatever they are going to display the surface protein of foreign cells that they consume. First step, APC encounters a cell with a foreign MHC protein marker. If you're wondering what these are, all living things are marked with surface proteins, and that's the way we tell self from non-self, and that's the way we prevent ourselves from being invaded. The APC is going to consume the antigen. That makes sense. But what's slick is the APC is then going to display the surface marker of whatever it is that it's attacking us. It's a way of like holding up the armor of our enemy and showing it around, saying, hey, we're under attack, here's what they're wearing. After it consumes the antigen, the APC is also going to release some proteins. They're called complement proteins. I'll talk about those. And also releases cytokines. And cytokines do all sorts of things. They're going to cause a fever. They're going to cause swelling. They're alerting the body that we're under attack. The cytokines are going to cause the capillaries to swell and become leaky. And that's what we want. We want white blood cells to flow out of the bloodstream and into the tissues. We want to move them into the battlefield. And that's where we get the swelling, and that's when we start to feel uncomfortable. But that's when you don't reach for that cold remedy, because you want this response to take on the invader. By displaying the antigen surface marker, the APC is now going to communicate with a naive T cell. Why is it naive? Well, it hasn't decided what it wants to be. This little coupling that I've shown with my little illustration is a key communication between the APC and the T cell. So now the T cell knows. The T cell, the naive one, the one that doesn't know what it wants to be, is going to split, and it's a three-way split, into either a helper T cell we call it, a memory T cell, which is going to be held in reserve, or a cytotoxic killer T cell. Helper T cells are going to attach to all antigens that have that foreign MHC marker. And when they attach, the helper T is going to release cytokines. And cytokines are a stimulant. It causes the body to produce massive amounts of white blood cells, because we need these warriors now. We're under attack. And that's why patients that come to the ER, if they have an elevated white blood cell count, we know they're fighting an infection. And we know the helper T's are doing their job. The cytotoxic T cells used to be called killer T. I like that old name. They release a perforin toxin, and it perforates. It makes holes in any antigens that have the foreign MHC marker. And you see my diagram here. There's that cytotoxic. It's releasing perforin, and it punches a hole right through the antigen and kills it. Cytotoxic T cells also secrete chemicals that cause apoptosis. That's a technical name for cell death. And they not only destroy antigens, but will keep our body clear of cancers. Finally, the memory T cell. I made this one pink because it's held in reserve. it does nothing but circulate in our bloodstream, sometimes for years, waiting, waiting, waiting. And then one day, it encounters a foreign antigen that has the proper marker, and it goes right to work and starts killing them without having to wait for a macrophage to bring the message. I mentioned there were two routes to adaptive immunity. Here's the second one. It's called antibody-mediated. Here's a good review. We start with an APC. It's going to attack an antigen. Then it's going to display the MHC marker, as you can see in my diagram. And here, instead of going to a T cell, it's going to a B cell to stimulate the immune response. The B cell can also be stimulated directly by encountering the antigen. So there's two ways. Once the B cell is stimulated, it's going to begin to pump lots of immunoglobulins, IgSs. Those are antibodies that attach to the surface of antigens. Okay, let's get those terms straight. Antibodies are good, produced by B cells. Antigens are bad, those are the invaders. Once these antibodies attach to the surface of antigens, they're going to attract our body defense cells like macrophages, dendritics, any other APCs. So what we have now is, instead of a slow random collision between the APCs and the antigens, okay, so think of this. Before the antibodies, the APCs are wandering around, they bump into something, and they say, whoa, you don't belong. They eat it, they display the marker. This takes hours, sometimes days. However, now with antibodies, there's a focused attack. The APCs, there's no hesitation. They're stimulated to go directly to the clumping of these antibodies, and they destroy everything around. So it's a rapid, focused, and it's what we need if we want to get well. A primary immune response, this is when you first encounter the infective agent. That takes about 4 to 5 days before your APCs collide with the antigens, and then the naive T cells specialize into helpers and cytotoxics and memory. So by that time, you're sick. However, a secondary immune response, that's a reinfection of the same invader. That peaks in only 2 to 3 days because of memory T cells and antibodies that are already there to attack. Think about this. Maybe you had a cold 2 months ago. You've recovered, and now someone sneezes in your face. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get sick. And you do. You start to feel sniffles and a little achy, and then suddenly, after a day or two, you're not sick. You never really got sick. And you think, my gosh, what happened? Well, what happened was, this is the second time you've been infected, and the memory T cells and antibodies are there ready to go. They're not going to wait for APCs to collide with antigens. These guys are going right to work and keeping you from being sick. Continuing on with the antibody concept, IgA is a type of antibody that we find in mucus, and it prevents invaders from attacking the respiratory and digestive system. So when you have that runny nose, don't reach for that cold medicine. Just enjoy knowing that that mucus is loaded with IgA, and it's destroying viruses by the millions. IgM is often our first responder to infection. It has many arms, and it's especially effective at destroying viruses that tend to be clumped, and those many arms just start scooping up viruses, marking them, and bringing the APCs along for destruction. An antibody called IgE stimulates the release of histamines, which is going to promote inflammation and fever. It accounts for the miserable, achy, hot feeling we get when we're sick. But it also helps us to recover a little quicker. Here it is. This is what happens in our body when we're invaded, and the third line of defense, the adaptive immunity, goes to work. And this is why we don't take a cold medicine, because that's going to shut down all of these cells and all of these proteins. So what do we take when we're sick? Do we take those nasty smelling herbs or lots of vitamin C pills? Well, think about it. We're losing fluids because of edema, because of cytokines. So we need to replace those fluids. Whatever we have needs to have lots of liquids. But we're going to urinate those out unless they have electrolytes. So we need lots of mineral salts and other materials in that liquid. And finally, we are making millions of antibodies, and those are proteins. So we need to have protein in our diet. Sometimes people are sick and they eat cereal, they lose their appetite. No, what we do is we have chicken soup with vegetables. That is considered by many scientists to be the best solution to a cold, along with the rest. Hey, there's no words on this summary. Whoa. Young Skywalker, when you can figure out this diagram, you will be ready. Good luck, you guys.